not the majority, it's only one or two every now and then, you know? And obviously the rest of the team on site are usually like, how do you put up with?
Welcome to the Ground Investigation Podcast, a show featuring interviews and insights from leaders in the geotechnical and geoenvironmental business world. Join host Michael Taylor as he discusses the ups and downs of running a business in the GI industry, getting geological experts to share their learnings and lessons, as well as their plans for the future, highlighting what they think will improve the ground investigation industry moving forward. Now, here is your host, Michael Taylor.
Our guest is going to be Tessa Steward. Tessa has 3 years experience in the ground investigation / geotechnical industry. Tessa, welcome.
Hiya.
So I was wanting to kick off, if you could just start by telling us a little bit about your background and your journey into the geotechnical, geoenvironmental industry.
So I'm originally from Pembrokeshire, so was obviously drawn towards geology from a young age, living on the coast. Okay. And I had the 2 best, most enthusiastic teachers at A-level, Miss Unwin and Mr. Evans. From this, I went on to study geology at Cardiff for both bachelor's and master's, and during my master's placement at Geobind, I got a real feel for the challenges and puzzles of geotechnical engineering.
So you're saying, so you grew up in Pembrokeshire?
Yes, yeah, so West Wales.
What was it about the area that particularly inspired you? Were you a kind of outdoorsy person? Did you go for long walks and look at all the kind of rock exposures?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. No, walking with my parents around the coast all the time. And when people say this to me about like, why are you interested in rocks? I'm like, have you not looked at them? Have you not looked at your surroundings? But yeah, no, it's a beautiful area, incredible coastline.
It is. It's some of my fondest times is going to Wales on holiday, because it is such a beautiful place, and the rock exposures are fantastic. Did you go on any field trips around that area then?
Yes, so obviously doing my A-levels in Pembroke School with Miss Unwin and Mr. Evans took us out every 2 weeks on field trips around there, mapping angle from the age of 16, all of that, fossil hunting, the lot.
Yeah. Find any good fossils yourself? Any decent intact, good-sized ones?
No, unfortunately, because I know the largest trilobite found is St. Davidus in St. David's in North Pembrokeshire, but I haven't found one myself, and I'm a bit wound up about it.
No, I've watched a few videos and you seem to find amazing fossils. But myself, I've never found anything more than kind of, a fragment of one, really. No,
same year. A kid found a brand new dinosaur in Penarth the other day, and I was like, I'm hanging around there all the time looking at the fossils. Can't believe I missed a brand new dinosaur.
That would be pretty good, wouldn't it, to put on your CV, found brand new dinosaur. I get they would get to name it as well, wouldn't they?
I know, I have no idea what the 5-year-old named it, but probably something great, I imagine.
Dinosaurus or something. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your roles and responsibilities as a geotech engineer at Amey.
So I'm currently at Amey Consulting and working on the South Wales Valley lines, improving infrastructure for the rails that haven't been touched for a long, long time. It's great. So I've just finished this week the interpretive reporting for Cardiff Bay Station, the new Butan Station and Penarth Station. And I'm particularly interested in these because these are the routes I take every day to work. These are the train lines that I get on. So that's been really exciting for me.
So how
getting to improve the lines I use every day.
Interpretive report writing. Is that something that you're particularly fond of, doing the interpretation as opposed to the factual?
Yeah, so I do enjoy the factuals because I love maps. I love maps. Yeah. Historic maps, abandoned mine maps, geological maps. Absolutely love maps. But for me, the interpretation, I think it gets my brain ticking a lot more, and having to work it all out and what it means, I find really, really intriguing.
What did you experience with RPS and Geobind in terms of what did you learn whilst you were there to add to your sort of skill set and career today?
Well, working with Geobind during my master's dissertation, I got a great understanding for road design and the interesting science behind soil stabilisation. That was brilliant for me. And then as geoenvironmental with RPS, that really helped me massively with understanding and collaborating with the geoenvironmental team in my current role.
What is it about the road design? Is that something that particularly interests you? Kind of seeing it go from, a ground investigation, a geotechnical project to actually seeing it kind of manifested in a civil structure for people to use?
That's the thing for me. I like the complexity of like interpretations and the designs. And getting to see the physical outcome of it at the end is really inspiring.
And it's there for a long time, isn't it?
That's the thing.
So I noticed while looking through your LinkedIn profile, you've done some geoenvironmental and geotechnical work. What's kind of your preference?
For me, I prefer geotechnical because I find that my brain's going so rapid fire all the time. And it really challenges me and makes me think a lot more. That not that geoenvironmental doesn't, don't get me wrong, but seeing it from beginning to end, from ground investigation to the final product, and being involved pretty much every step of the way, really helps. Like building a bigger picture and understanding every aspect of it really, really helps me and what I'm most drawn to.
I would agree with. I tend to find geotechnical a little bit more interesting. That's why kind of recruitment company I generally focus on the geotechnical. We do some geoenvironmental, but only to a point, because it doesn't interest me really as much as the kind of geotechnical side. So I'm kind of with you there. I was wondering if you can share some insights into the current project that you were referring to, the transformation project with Amey in South Wales.
Yes, so they've been doing a lot of redoing track designs, track loops, station upgrades, new stations around Cardiff. It's really good, and it's going to get obviously South Wales way more interconnected, quicker access to the capital for those out in the valleys. And that's what really drew me to it, because being a Welsh girl, improving Welsh infrastructure is something that I'm very passionate about.
Great for potential economic growth for the area. Connected places. It's kind of like the HS2. In terms of we're going to do this at the HS3, the northern part, which I think the council's now, but that would potentially give an opportunity for growth sort of further north as well. But it's been cut now, hasn't it? So there you go. So
I think it has, hasn't it?
It has. Who knows? I'm sure it will come back online, and I'm sure there'll be protesters there just waiting for that decision to be made. So in terms of your...
It's not geotech engineering without them.
Exactly. Have you ever experienced any protesters at all?
No, not particularly. Mostly nosy locals is what we tend to get. Peering through the bars, asking what's going on, why we're doing that. But yeah, no, I've luckily avoided protesters so far.
We've seen some on HS2. People parking cars in your access routes, can't get in there. But kind of leaving it all taxed and insured and everything, so you can't just call the police and get them to move it because they have the right to park there. So there has been some funny occasions with people like that. But at the end of the day, it's a controversial topic. Strangely, updating a railway link. It depends on what areas you go through and places of natural beauty, that sort of thing. Can't ruin that, but we are humans. We do have to get around, and we do need progress. Civil progress, I think. So,
absolutely.
Looking at your kind of bachelor's degree, it's in Exploration and Resource Geology. So was that a deliberate choice then? How's it kind of affected you in terms of your geotechnical and geoenvironmental engineering skills?
Well, we're currently working on the South Wales Valley Lines. Yeah. My bachelor knowledge from the South Wales coalfield and the mines has really come in handy when doing coal mining reports, and the fact that the risks that are factored in when it comes to the design stage. The understanding of those is massively, because good old Pete Brabham really has drilled into us everything about the South Wales coalfields for the past 4 years. So, that's coming really in handy with doing the train lines.
Did you originally want to go into mineral exploration or oil exploration, anything like that?
Well, not particularly. I was interested in it, but after my bachelor's, I went on to do a master's in environmental geology because I did think I am a bit too much of a hippie to be on an oil rig. I think it's great, but I know that, I'll do an environmental one instead.
So you feel to taper it, so you had to go on to do a master's then to kind of taper it towards more something around this kind of geotechnical and geoenvironmental industry?
Yeah, no, with having covered the modules of geotech engineering, structural soils and contaminated land in my master's, that's gave me such a good baseline for starting my career. Yeah,
it certainly seems to be more kind of tapered to what we do now. I would imagine. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what modules you would do in the exploration bachelor's. What kind of things would you go over during that?
Ores and Oregenesis. We did sedimentary, and we did a lot of mineralogy as well.
Okay.
And structural soils as well. We did those sort of things, and it was a lot of metamorphic and mostly mineralogy and those kind of bits. It was great. It was great.
It sounds quite an interesting topic. So I kind of done a straight bachelor's geology. Actually, no, it didn't. It was applied environmental, but there wasn't really much environmental aspect to it at all. There was some kind of ore geology in economic geology, that sort of thing, which was particularly interesting. It gets very complicated very quickly, doesn't it? So, could you highlight some of the key takeaways from the masters that we referred to a moment in applied environmental geology? What's been particularly beneficial in your career? And if you could just touch on a little bit more about what you were saying a moment ago, perhaps expand on that.
Yeah, so having covered the geotechnical engineering, structural soils, contaminated land, those sort of things, doing labs as well was great, and getting an understanding of whatever goes on in like the testing that we don't usually get to see personally ourselves. Also, Pete Bradham's constant demand for professionalism certainly had an impact on me. Yeah. So that's been great too. But it was a great start up to my career choice. The modules covered, the lecturers, it was all incredible.
Well, you mentioned about the lab. Did you get to perform any tests yourself? What kind of exposure did you have to the lab?
Yes, so we did a lot of axial testing, plate load testing, sieving, everything. So it was quite good. It was a proper, well set out lab, and we had a big piece of coursework on all of that. So it was great to have knowledge of how those tests are carried out, what they are testing for, rather than just, when you're writing interpretative reports, just getting data and not knowing really quite how that data is achieved.
Yeah. Were you ever kind of interested in becoming a lab technician and then going on further in that side?
I do love it.
Yeah.
I do love it, but I don't know if that's just the white coats. I don't know if it's just looking professional, the white coats.
It seems, I started with a kind of large ground investigation contractor, and I did go into the lab a couple of times. But to me, it looked a bit tedious. I mean, maybe someone will shoot me for saying that, but for me, I much prefer being out of a building, essentially being on site, even if it is kind of raining. Yeah,
no, I agree. Being in a room with bright white lighting all day would probably drive me a little bit mad.
That's definitely not why I got into the industry myself. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you continue to learn and grow professionally since graduating from the master's program.
So it took me a while to truly settle on what I wanted to do with my career. After my master's, I think that had a lot to do with having undiagnosed ADHD and not quite understanding how to make the most of my brain at that point. However, my current team have been so incredible and really helped me settle and get a grasp on what it is I want for my future career, especially starting up with my chartership. Okay. They've been incredibly helpful with all of that.
Nice. So you've started doing it, because I was discussing this with someone on another podcast, and they're kind of going back and collecting the information and getting things signed off at a later date, which proves to be a bit of a pain. So, but you're kind of doing it as you go.
Yeah. Well, I had to do that a bulk day of just getting everything that I've done for the past 3 years. But now I've got a spreadsheet, and I cannot recommend enough putting things in as you go, because a lot of my colleagues are going for it now. I'm ready to start. Have to kind of collate 5 years worth of work and CPD and all of that and their notes, and that seems like the kind of stress and chaos I think would be the end of me. It's like something that I would not be able to handle.
Yeah, no, that on top of everything else, the day to day and going to work and everything else that is required of us. So what do you so from becoming a chartered geologist then, how do you hope, and what's the plans when you become chartered?
Well, when I become chartered, I'm hoping I'll be able to get up to senior. If not, then maybe do some freelancing. because I've done freelancing before before my current role, and that was pretty great.
Yeah. And where were you freelancing?
I mostly did work with Mark O'Neill from Gowan Engineers. Okay. He was brilliant in helping me out. He was great.
And what were you doing when you freelanced? Working on site, logging soils, minding rigs, that sort of thing?
Yeah, lots of site works, and obviously lots of spreadsheets, interpreting data. So a little bit of both desk work and site work for him.
But you prefer to be employed rather than go and freelance then?
Yeah, currently, because I think the stability is what I need at the moment of a permanent job. I think with, I have to sort out, obviously, with having ADHD, I have to have a routine. And freelance sounds great, but I think for me at the moment, I need the routine.
It's a different. Well, I suppose in employment you kind of can get exposed to more things, give more responsibility. Not always, of course. But on the flip side, in terms of freelance, you can kind of pick and choose the projects and companies depending on how busy it is. The money's better. You can't get around that fact. You can get a nice day rate. So for long term though, I mean, if you become chartered and you're well experienced, because I think that's one of the problems a lot of people, including myself, will do a short amount of time at a company and then go straight into freelancing, and you really don't have the experience at that point, I don't think. So I do think it's better to have a bit more experience, and then you can go on do other things within your project management, site management, and all these things, and of course get paid more per day. So I was wondering if you could share some of the challenges that has contributed to your personal development so far.
Well, as I mentioned, my ADHD, while undiagnosed, caused quite a few issues at the beginning of my career and my ability to focus. I struggled with kind of understanding certain things and having a routine. And saying that as well, I still haven't quite got the hang of driving, which just doesn't seem to compute with my brain. And as we know, every geotechnical job requires driving license in the job description. And I've managed to, so far, I get lifts places, like taxis, I can travel by train, especially in the South Wales Valleys lines. It's all so close to me that I'm able to do that. But I'm trying to drive, but I found it's just been, something that my brain doesn't quite work with. Because with ADHD, people are either brilliant at some things, and then some things that are just completely normal to other people, their brain just won't be able to focus on it and do it.
Fair enough. So we'll talk a little bit more about ADHD later on in the podcast. But in terms of the driving, what is it? Mm-hmm. What is it that causes a problem in that aspect?
I think I'm not sure if it's like the focusing on everything around me at once, and then also the changing gears, the clutch, I'm either a bit too cautious or uncautious when it comes to coming out of junctions. Yeah, I think I overthink it a lot more. And then because I'm overthinking it, I forget to do the important things,
Sure. So have you had...
Like change gear or press start.
Have you had lots of lessons then?
I have had a few. I haven't had any for the past few months now. But I am planning to maybe just do a 2 weeks annual leave and just do one of those week intensive courses in maybe an automatic, so it's less thinking to do.
So we moved to Portugal, myself and family, about 9-10 months ago, and obviously they're driving the wrong side of the road here, which isn't the complication.
Mm-hmm.
It's sitting on the other side of the car and using the other hand, your left hand, to change gear. That took me about, a week, 2 weeks to get used to it, and a fair few near misses with me and the family in, because your brain's like, no, you're on the wrong side of the car, you're using the wrong hand. It's like right and left hand. It takes a while to get used to. You do get used to it after a while. Now it's easy. When we come back to the UK, I'm sure it will be the exact opposite. What the hell am I doing on this side of the
just mirroring.
Exactly. So what kind of advice would you have for recent graduates entering the field based on your own experiences?
I would say try different roles, different responsibilities. If something doesn't fit and work for you, mix it up. you aren't running out of time. You don't need to have everything completely in line and set in stone immediately. You are able to try, from geoenvironmental to geotechnical, and then went back to geotechnical. You know, you can mix it up and see what appeals to you most.
Yeah, it's a good point, because some people, they'll go into it and think that, well, this is me now, but it's not. You can change your job. You can change it. So some people might go into geotechnical and realise, actually, I much prefer the geoenvironmental, or you want to go offshore, or whatever it is. But yeah, there's always time to look and change your skill set over time, taper it towards whatever it is that you want to do. So could you describe a sort of challenging project that you worked on?
Definitely.
You know, had a few obstacles which you had to overcome?
I'd say being a woman in engineering is quite a confusing one to begin with. And luckily I've got an amazing team, as I mentioned, but that can be quite off-putting for some people, I found, and which is a shame, which is a massive shame.
Is this so when you say women in engineering, so being a woman in the field, that's kind of can create a hardship for you?
Yeah, I would say, because for me, I mean, obviously working in the offices and all that kind of stuff is fine, but I have faced some casual sexism or ill-fitting PPE on site works. But actually, Catherine Evans from Boulders Brass on LinkedIn is doing amazing work for women's PPE in the UK. She's doing incredible stuff. So I recommend checking her out at some point.
Sure. Okay. I actually had to come on a podcast a while ago, but she refused. For some reason, I do not know.
Oh,
but she did. I listened to the one that she did on another podcast. I can't remember the name of it. Ground Engineering, I believe. But yeah, I mean, in terms of sexism, yeah, I can see that. The PP. I remember having PP that didn't fit me. I'm not sure what it is.
On track though, you trip over, you're gonna.
That's true. I remember when I first started.
In a field, fine.
Yeah. So in terms of the clothing, would kind of the smaller, the small trousers, the small jackets, would that not fit people? Or are you talking women who are just very petite?
I found as well, the thing is, the boiler suits, things like that, the overalls, the coveralls, the shoes, the PPE that was on offer to us also wasn't windproof or properly waterproof. Like the males one was, and then the small ones were still too big for us. So that was a bit annoying, because it was a bit like, well, I'm also working on site at night in the winter. I quite need a waterproof jacket that is properly waterproof, not just basically an anorak. So immediately.
So when you mentioned about kind of sexism,
but yeah, the standards were much lower.
Sexism at work, which is on site primarily.
Yeah, it'd be on site.
Do you think that's the type of person who's generally on site as opposed to in the office?
I don't know what it is, and it's not the majority. It's only one or two every now and then, And obviously, the rest of the team on site are usually like, "How do you put up with that?" And it's not the majority. It's only one or two every now and then, And obviously, the rest of the team on site are usually like, "How do you put up with that?" And I'm like, "I just ignore it and do my job." You can't be fighting it constantly, annoyingly. I've got things to be doing. I can't be teaching this person to treat women like humans. I've got a job to be doing right now. But yeah, I found that it tends to be on site. And I don't know if it tends to be because it's outdoors and lads encouraging each other or what.
Do you think it's industry specific, or do you think some people are sexist? I suppose generalization. Generalization.
Yeah, this is the thing.
The older generation, should I say?
Well, yeah, I mean, my first ever site, I was explaining what we were doing that day, and one of the guys said, "Bit of a bossy, isn't she?" And I was like, "Oh my god, this is my first ever site, and I've already been called up." I was like, "Oh." Jesus. So it's all been up from there, quite frankly. It wasn't even being that bossy.
No, that's not on. It's not on to treat people like that in general, is it? But especially if you are, as a young graduate starting out in your career, you might not have the confidence you would have, in 10 years' time, that sort of thing, once you've been through a few more things. But no, that's absolutely not right. Not right at all. So I was wondering if you could
Yeah. Luckily for me, confidence has never been an issue.
That helps, but for the meeker, people that don't have much confidence, are a bit shy.
Yeah. It should be accessible to all, and they shouldn't be able to get away with saying those things.
Situation, I suppose you can only fight so many fires, like you were saying, but reporting them. Do you think that the companies deal with it well when reported?
Well, we've had one recently, not involving me personally, so I don't really want to go too much detail about it. But it did go to the higher ups, and then it kind of went around to some other people, and it was basically came back to the conclusion of, oh, she was being sensitive. Oh, which she was not. But yeah, so I think companies could deal with it better.
Yeah.
Because there's already a case of we don't want to call it out because we don't want to seem like we're making a scene.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I suppose there's no defence to ignore it, and I suppose if the companies do, it will just keep the problem alive, and there will always be sexism, racism in society. I imagine it's a lot better now 30 years ago, and in 30 years' time, it'll be a lot better then.
Yeah.
Yes, open. Progress is made, but yeah, more can be done. So, in terms of your projects and achievements, is there anything that particularly stands out for yourself that you've done so far?
So, I think my team working on the Taffwell depot, for the train depot, has been great to see that going from just a few boreholes, this incredible functioning train depot now, with box bridges, and it's where all the trains are cleaned down and all that kind of stuff. And that's been really good, with lots of retaining walls, and seeing all of that going in has been really, really great. It's been my favourite bits to watch.
Okay, so can you explain any of the key factors and considerations that go into kind of one of your more successful ground investigation geotechnical projects? What were the kind of the key aspects that make it successful?
Planning, communication, and site walkouts, especially on track. We had a site recently that we couldn't get the rig onto the track, which can be an absolute nightmare with the time restrictions and working at night. So site walkouts and track walkouts prior to the GI, I think, are so necessary.
How much work have you done on the railways?
So I've done quite a few sites, night shifts and sites ground investigations. I've actually got some coming up in Penarth over the next few weeks, which is for more bits that we need. And I do enjoy them, I do like a night shift.
Yeah.
They could be fun.
What do you enjoy about it?
I think I enjoy just seeing it all happen, and I think everyone tends to be like, especially on night shifts, everyone tends to they've been doing their jobs, but everyone just seems to be a bit more relaxed and just can natter and open up, and I think that's kind of great. I think you really get to know people on night shifts. When you're all cold and it's raining, that's when you properly chat to people.
Is there a bit more pressure on a night shift, because you need the possession, and then sometimes you get there and, it's delayed for some reason, doesn't have the correct signature, and then it's a case of go, 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 we have 4 hours, get it done and get off. Is there a bit more pressure in relation to that?
Yeah, definitely. There definitely is. But I think that adds all to the thrill of it. Yeah. It can be a bit stressful, but when you've got it done, there's so much more of a sense of achievement.
Can you explain how you experienced so far, and your fieldwork experience really with the geotechnical entries kind of helped you in the office in terms of your report writing, your lab work, that sort of thing?
Well, that's the thing. The site experience that I gained from Mark O'Neill with Gowan Engineers before I started at Amey gave me a great base for starting up. Getting down with the sampling and stuck right in has helped my understanding and visualization of ground modelling in a way I never would have got without being on sites and doing it myself.
What would you say you're best at in your job? Whether it's this current job or, is it logging soil, is it logging rock, is it site management? And what would you enjoy the most?
So, what I'm best at in my job, I asked this question to my colleague, and he said being bright, breezy and bubbly. And I was like, but for me, I'd say obviously from desk study to interpretive, everything in between that, brilliant. I love the maps, I love the laying out, I love the finally understanding it and putting your ideas, interpretations out there. and then your suggestions for designs. I can go on for it for hours and hours and hours and just go into a complete bubble of a site. And that is all I'm thinking about for hours on end.
So what's the most enjoyable aspect of that for yourself?
Maps, route maps, geological maps, historical maps, abandoned maps, Google Earth maps. I love maps. Definitely probably something to do with my neurodivergency, but I love them.
Do you do the desk report yourself, the desk study?
Yeah, we do the desk studies ourselves.
Desk study.
We do them.
The ground investigation and then the recommendations as well. So you mentioned a couple of times in relation to ADHD. Can you share us a little bit about your personal journey and challenges that you've faced in receiving your diagnosis?
Yeah. For me, I didn't understand ADHD at all before my diagnosis. I thought it was just something the naughty and disruptive kids in school had. But I couldn't quite understand why I felt a bit like an alien, and my thought processes and brain seemed to work so differently to most people around me, which was quite isolating and strange for a good portion of my life, because I spent so much time and energy trying to be what's perceived as normal and fit in, and like masking who I am, basically. So that was that's probably was my biggest challenge.
What kind of didn't feel normal to you relative to what you're saying is what normal is?
Well, this is the thing. I think how other people would just be able to act, and their ideas and their opinions and their thought processes, and how they went from one thought to another, and like my brain couldn't work out how it worked in such a linear ways, and how they went to that conclusion and stuff like that. Because my brain goes a very different way around those sorts of things.
How has it inhibited you so far then, would you say?
I think it was mostly, it just like held me back being who I probably am, and also the not understanding how to use my brain properly. Now I know that that's what I have. I can use the resources and understand myself better. And therefore, that's had a great impact on my career,
sure. So
as well as my personal life.
Kind of learn to use your brain more effectively. Now, since your diagnosis, I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about that. What do you do now, or what's the process that's been changed?
Well, for me, the understanding now that like I am normal, my brain just my like mental abilities just work basically on a different iOS system to most people. The outcome's the same. It's the same thing. The buttons are just in the different places. It's basically how it works. And like understanding that that's how my brain thinks and how I come to conclusions has like helped me massively. Routine, exercise. I take medication for it on occasion if I really need to focus on something and nothing else for a day. I will then take my medication that day, but I tend to not take it every day because I quite like my brain the way it is, and now I understand it and basically hacked it. It's great.
You mentioned medication then. So I suppose there's some upsides which you can concentrate more, but I suppose there's probably some downsides with, medication at the same time.
Yeah, I found that it mostly, like, mine only lasts a few hours, so that's great. For me, it's not like you have to build it up over time or anything. It's just like a short, sharp hit of hyper-focusing for a few hours, which is great. But obviously, with site works, you have to declare it all first. Because obviously, if you get drug tests on site and you haven't declared it to them, then it does show up that you've got meth in your system or speed in your system, and that is not what you want. I mean, it's not that. It's just it has those ingredients incorporated in it. So if you are going to take it ever for your ADHD, make sure you tell people about it before you go on site.
In terms of, what would you say, and maybe you don't think there is any, but what would you say is positive effects of your ADHD? Are there any positive effects? Is there anything that it's helped you in life?
Oh, massively. Like, I wouldn't change it for the world at all. It's just that the having it and not understanding what it was the worst part. Now I know what it is, and I know that that's just how my brain works, and I understand the science behind it, and I get how my thought process work. It's a massive help. It means that sometimes I can do 3 hours worth of work in 30 minutes, because I can just focus. If I'm interested in something, I will go down a rabbit hole and not talk to anyone for like a day.
Yeah.
And I come out and everyone's like, how have you done that so quickly? And I'm like, oh yeah, I got a bit too interested in it, and my brain was going off like fireworks. So yeah, no, it is a great thing, and I wouldn't change it.
Block other things out, just get done, prioritize, and get done what you need to get done. So how did your diagnosis affect your career then? So you're saying you can utilize your brain much better, you understand it now, you know exactly what to do. So how did it affect your career then? When were you diagnosed, if you don't mind me asking?
It was about 3 or 4 months ago now. So very recently, but I found it impacted me. Like, now I work different hours because I know that I work best between the hours of about 7 and 4. So I'll work those sort of hours. I take regular breaks, and I can take things at my own pace because I know that I will produce the work and I will produce it to a high standard in a timely fashion. But if say I've been working for an hour and a half and my brain's just not computing with it anymore, I don't kick myself for that now. I don't it takes away the stress of that. I'll go away, I'll have a little break for a minute, and I'll come back and I'll be able to do it again.
Fair enough. So in your experience so far then, how do you think that, workplaces, organizations can support people with ADHD and neurodiversity in general?
So for me, the Neurodiversity Committee at Amey have done brilliantly. They've done talks with line managers and company-wide to spread awareness of all these sort of things and how to handle them as someone in a managerial role who's looking after someone that's got something like this. And no other company I've been with before has done anything like that as far as I'm aware. And I think the education of it is such a good place to start because, I have it. And have been struggling with it for 27 years, and even I was clueless about it.
So have you found yourself, since you've been diagnosed a few months ago, have you found yourself kind of going down a rabbit hole and learning as much about it as you can? Yeah.
Oh, massively. That comes with having ADHD, I think. You find a niche interest and you hyperfix on it. So, yeah, no, understanding, researching a lot about it and reading about it and being like, oh my God, that makes sense. I'm not wrong. It's just, that's how my brain works. Okay. It turns out it's a real thing.
Women tend to receive a diagnosis later on in their lives as opposed to men.
Women tend to receive a diagnosis much later in life than men because the symptoms in women tend to show up differently to in men. And also there's a huge case of women tend to mask it when they're younger a lot more and hide what they're actually like because of so it doesn't come out in behaviors, it's more internalized. And it's more that their brain's going and tiring them out and just going constantly rapid fire and getting a bit muddled up about certain things, and they're not understanding, like me, they're not understanding why they're like that. Because for boys, it tends to come out in, being a little bit more disruptive in class and stuff like that. So it's diagnosed a lot earlier in guys.
A bit more disruptive as well, isn't it? So it's quite easy for it to hide behind because we're a naughty lad sort of thing. But what you kind of internalize things more, so you'd be a bit quieter perhaps than.
Well, I'm quite loud and always have been for me. But I think it comes out I can be very, very twitchy, very, very fidgety, doodling all the time, daydreaming. Those sort of symptoms is what tends to happen for women who are younger, in childhood and stuff like that with ADHD. It tends to be those sort of symptoms rather than behavioural.
In terms of your involvement in some committees such as the neurodiversity and the women engineering, I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about them then, please.
Yes, so I'm part of the Neurodiversity Committee at Amey. We do regular meetings, spreading awareness. They've just started sending out the sunflower lanyards now to those who want them. And as for women in engineering, I'm part of the lean-in group at Amey. And we base what we do on the leanin.org circles. So that's been really great, having like all those amazing, sort of impressive, inspiring women around me to have a meet up with. Like, doesn't matter where we are in our career. I mean, I'm just at the very start. Some of them are so much higher up and further up in the company. We just all get together and discuss these things, and it's brilliant. It's really, really great. And the support I think, has been brilliant.
Highlight it, push out. And it's good with a company like Amey. They're a large company, got good resources. I suppose some of the smaller companies would struggle to keep up with those sorts of things. But in terms of a large company like that, then it's particularly good. So you kind of create a network to support each other going forward. Do you do any talks or anything like that yourself? Are you part of any groups that you push forward, or anything? Talks and skills, for instance?
So I'm part of the Ground Engineering Cymru committee, which is on LinkedIn, if anyone would like to join. Under ICE Wales Cymru Ground Engineering Group. We've just been on our summer break now, actually. So otherwise I would have given a shout out to our latest talk that we have coming up. But they're great, and we do talks about all geotechnical and ground investigation stuff around Wales every month. And we're always looking for new interesting talks to do. And if anyone wants to join, we love new members.
I was wondering if you can tell me, so we just kind of quickly discussed what your company is doing to help promote and create groups to help support people with ADHD or neurodivergency, etc., or women engineering. What can individuals do to help out with that?
This thing, I think, education. Just educating yourself, looking up on it, understanding that it's not this kind of like thing that necessarily hold people back and makes them less than. It's not anything like that. If you have an understanding of it, you'll be able to get those people a lot better and be able to help them and appeal to their needs.
It always helps.
So education, I'd say.
Great awareness in certain aspects. Do you think in terms of the women engineering, is it a kind of goal? And I'm pretty certain it is, of course, and I don't see why it wouldn't be. So to have more women in ground investigations or geotechnical or geoenvironmental industry?
Oh, massively. I mean, there's still this idea that it's a man's job, which I can tell you absolutely isn't just for men at all. If you're a woman interested in ground investigation, you should not hold back or be held back from going into it. I think all areas of ground investigation could benefit from having more women. Absolutely.
In terms of their opportunities to go into it?
I think it's a lot to do with more because it's viewed as a man's job. They don't want to get into an industry that's just like that, And I think that where it comes into the sex and stuff, and we should be calling it out, because then it's making it a safer, better place for women to feel comfortable in and get into it.
Okay. So do you think you've had a fair chance within the industry so far?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Besides some of the difficulties I've faced with site works, I think I've been well supported. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I recommend all women that think about getting into this career to definitely go for it. It's a great place.
Comments would you kind of like to leave on in relation to, I suppose, that person who still has the latent sexism around them, and they don't mind saying things like what you mentioned earlier on about being a bossy bitch, or any kind of casual sexist remarks which may seem to them to not be as important. But however, to the other person it can ruin their day. It can affect their confidence.
I think that just have a thought for a second. Put yourself in the shoes of this young girl on site having to talk to and get her point across to a group of a lot of older guys. Like, it can be quite intimidating. It can be, no matter how confident and how much you know about what you're doing. It can be quite, overwhelming. And just to make someone in that scenario feel a little bit smaller and worse, and to pick on someone that's, because they're an easy target, is pointless. It's punching down. Don't do it.
That brings us pretty much to the end of the podcast. Do you have any leaving comments that you'd like to get across to the audience? Thank you for
not really. Just thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
I think I've only really gone into some of those aspects, and I'm sure there's plenty more discussion to be had, and of course there will be going forward. But thanks very much for your time. I most appreciate it. Thanks for your time, Tessa.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ground Investigation Podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, then please support the show by leaving it a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. For more information on what was discussed in this episode, click the link in the show notes now.